Ladies and gentlemen, it is that time of year yet again. We are going to start diving into college football predictions. So I'm going at this a little bit different than I did last year. If you guys were fans of my previous channel, the Mock Draft Guy, last year I did a total prediction, go through every conference, every team. It was an unbelievable amount of work, probably the most amount of work I've ever put into a video. But I figured this year this would be a lot more fun to do conference specific predictions. So I put up a poll on my Twitter and I wanted to do smaller conferences first. So the resounding winner with I think like 70 something percent was the MAC. Naturally, I didn't expect anything less. I think the first four conferences I put up there were the AAC, the MAC, the Sun Belt, and I think Conference USA were the first four that I put up there, and the MAC won in a landslide. But that was something that I was totally prepared for. I think I started even making this video before the poll was actually finished because the first like 25 votes were all for the MAC. But if you guys want to, I'm going to continue to use the poll on Twitter to kind of guide the way that I go through this series. I'm going to try and do maybe two of these a week, depending. I want to get these all out before week 0, which is around the end of August for the college football season. So I'm super excited to start this series now. And yeah, so follow me on Twitter at the Draft Hub. Super easy, same name as the YouTube channel. So without further delay, let's get into the MAC attack, the MACTION. Let's see what predictions I have for the 2025-26 season. So maybe to no one's surprise here, at number 13 in last place in the MAC for my predictions, I have the Kent State Golden Flashes with a record prediction of 0-12. Now, they are 1-23 over their last two seasons. Mark Carney officially took over as head coach this year. I don't really think it's going to make too much of a difference. I mean, this team was not only just decimated by graduation, it was decimated by transfers out. Just two starters from last year's offense are coming back. They're going to have to rely on their run game between Tyler Nubin and Gavin Garcia. They're really, really inexperienced and not proven in the wide receiver room. This is just, I think Tommy Arnold is going to be, so that's why I have him as the breakout candidate. Tommy Arnold is a returning tight end from last year. I believe he had about 400 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns. So really the leader, the returning leader in receiving yards and receiving touchdowns for the Kent State Golden Flashes. But man, I mean, really, what can I say about this team other than the fact that they're just in for another dismal campaign? And the new team for the Mid-American Conference this year is the Massachusetts Minutemen, the UMass Minutemen. So one thing that I love about this move for UMass is the fact that it's probably going to provide them with a little bit of an easier schedule than that independent schedule gives them. I have them at 2-10 here. They're 7-41 in the FBS since 2021. But like I said, the move to the MAC provides them with a little bit more optimism, a little bit more stability in their schedule, a little bit of an easier go about it. I think it's going to take a year or so of transition for the Minutemen, but they do have an entire new staff for the most part. AJ Hairston is a player that I think is going to kind of blossom last year. 54% completion percentage, around 500 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. He is going to have some sort of a quarterback battle between, I believe they brought in 2 new transfers for the quarterback position. I know it is Grant Jordan from Yale definitely came in. I'm drawing a blank on if there was another quarterback here. Rocco Griffin is a player that I think is going to be a huge part of this offense for them, transferred in from the University of Texas San Antonio. Darion Craig is a really nice returning linebacker for them. I think they have a lot to look forward to. I think, like I said, it's going to take a year or so of transition, but I think the Minutemen are going to be in that 4 to 6 win range within the next couple of seasons. But yeah, I do like AJ Hairston as a young player, 6'3", around that 210, 215 pound mark, can run as well. So he's a little bit of an exciting quarterback prospect for the Minutemen, one of the more exciting prospects they've had in quite some time. And I think things are definitely looking up for them. But for right now, I do have them at 2-10 in a transitional period, going from an independent going to the MAC. And the Akron Zips I have at number 11 in the conference here. The Zips are a team that are coming off of their best record since I believe 2021 last year with a 4-8 record. Joe Moorhead has no problem producing talent. It's just keeping the talent at Akron that is the toughest part. The biggest loss, at least this offseason, was the transfer of linebacker Brian McCoy going to Oklahoma State. This is a NFL prospect that I think has some real talent. I have him, spoiler alert, in my top 10, my top 15 linebackers for the 2026 NFL draft video comes out. He is firmly in that top 10. I think he's a fantastic overall player, but that's their leading tackler. That's really their defensive quarterback, if you will. They also lost defensive end CJ Nuali too. This was a team that really couldn't get it done for the most part on the defensive side. They limited, if you will, their opponents last year to 5.97 yards per snap, which is kind of crazy if you ask me. But Bruno Dahl is a nice player. That he's a redshirt freshman that showed some flashes last year in limited time. I think that he is going to take over on the edge there. Ben Finley is another player that I think had a pretty decent year last year. 16 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, but with a couple of transfers in. So not too many options to throw to for the most part for Ben Finley, but I think with an established ground game, I think he'll be able to limit the turnovers for the most part. Darian Lewis is another defensive back that I like quite a bit that is returning. So, this team, I had them at 3-9, but it feels like on the lower end. I could see them potentially improving from last year. Losing those two guys really is losing Brian McCoy, especially, is a massive, massive loss for this Akron Zips team. I don't know if there is someone that is going to be able to step up and take on the responsibility that Brian McCoy did have this last year for the Zips. But things could potentially look up if they do improve. I could see a 5-7 season. Not anything that's going to get them bowl eligible, but the Zips are a team that are slowly but surely starting to come out of the cellar of the MAC every single year. But for right now, I do have them at 3-9. The Ball State Cardinals just cracked the top 10, I guess you could say, for the MAC conference. I had them at a record prediction of 5-7. Kua Ashley is a big transfer for me. I think he's going to make a lot of noise for this Ball State Cardinals team. He was stuck behind Michael Benefield at Kennesaw State last year. They have a couple of good returning receivers in Cleon Magwood and Ty Robinson. Ty Robinson especially interests me quite a lot for this team. Robinson's a player 6'4", 205 pounds that interests me quite a bit as that boundary receiver, that number one target. They did lose Tanner Koziel to Texas Tech through the transfer portal. He was far and away their best receiving option last year from the tight end position. But I think Drew Cassins is a player that could break out again, another player that had around that 300, 400 receiving yards behind Koziel that I think he could break out in a big way. Joey Stemler as well is a player that I like a lot in the middle of this defense. This is just a team that I feel like just kind of lacks some real firepower. For the most part, on the offensive side, you have a lot of what ifs. Kua Ashley is a player that I like a lot in a lead back role, and then, like I mentioned before, with Robinson, he's someone that shows a lot of promise, but it's a lot of what ifs for this offense. So I think that's going to hold them back potentially. But yeah, I do think that this is a team. I think they went 5-7 last year. I don't remember off the top of my head, but this is a team that I see kind of repeating as they're just kind of lacking firepower on the offensive side of the ball. At 9, I have the Eastern Michigan Eagles here at 5-7. Again, this is a team that I think could definitely overperform. Chris Creighton has done a phenomenal job with this Eastern Michigan team over the last 9 years, 6 bowl games in the last 9 seasons for them. This is a team that I think really the reason why I have them at 5-7 is just the uncertainty at the quarterback position right now. You have three transfers that are coming in that are fighting for that number one spot. Noah Kim, Jeremiah Salem, and Cameron Edge, all awesome names, by the way. So those are 3 guys that you just don't really know what you're going to get from those guys. Quarterback uncertainty is a big thing for me in these predictions. Terry Lockett Jr., though, is one of, if not the best wide receivers in the entire MAC conference. I think he is going to explode this year. He's going to break out in a big way. I really wanted to have him as my offensive player of the season and have him as my breakout, but he also broke out in a big way last year. I think he just missed eclipsing 1,000 receiving yards. Jefferson Adam is a player that I like quite a bit off the edge as well, super athletic. And Barry Manning is someone that I think can make a lot of noise in that secondary that does have a lot of question marks. So, Chris Creighton is someone that has taken this Eastern Michigan Eagles team that was perpetually 2-10, 3-9, and turned them into basically a bowl eligible team almost every single year. I think they just miss out on it due to the uncertainty and the lack of a clear cut number one quarterback. But again, this is a team that I think could easily outperform this prediction and could go 6-6, 7-5 rather easily if you get some stability from that quarterback position. They're also getting some stability back in the run game. Dante McMillan is back from injury to lead that backfield. So, they could definitely overperform. This is a tentative 5-7. They could definitely overperform and make another bowl game. At number 8, maybe a surprise, I have the Bowling Green Falcons here with a record prediction of 6-6. The Bowling Green Falcons probably saw themselves in the headlines a lot more than they're used to with the shock hire of Tennessee State's Eddie George and his entire staff. Now, as the new head coach, brought over a couple of Tennessee State transfers as well. Drew Pine is a big name on the college football scene as well as someone that's been on, this is what, like his fourth or fifth different team. He is the clear cut quarterback number one now that Connor Bazelak is gone. Darius Lorfils is really the best of whoever is left on the defensive side of the ball. They don't have a single starter returning from the 2024 season on that side of the ball. And that's really that, and accompanied with the fact that Harold Fannin Jr., who was the leading receiver in all of college football last year, or super high up there if he wasn't, who was a tight end, who went to the NFL, was drafted in the 4th round by the Cleveland Browns. He is now gone as well. That is a massive, massive piece of this offense. There's just a lot going on for this Bowling Green Falcons team. I think 6-6 is rather generous considering all they lost on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side. I do think their offensive line is probably one of, if not the best in the MAC conference. I think that will carry their offense a little bit as well. But yeah, they have a couple of transfers. Collins Achempong from UCLA is a player that I've been quite enamored with the last couple of years. I'm just waiting for him to put it together. He initially was at Miami, then he transferred last year to UCLA. I don't think he played a single snap, but he's also like 6'7", 265 pounds of pure muscle from like Ghana, West Africa, I'm pretty sure. He's just an absolute monster of a human being. And if you could tap into any of that potential, I think he's going to make some real noise on the defensive side. But yeah, this Bowling Green Falcons team is just a team that I think is going to be subject to a worse record than last year because of all the talent that they lost. And 6-6, I think, feels a little generous considering they went 7-5 last year. But I'm curious to see what Eddie George can do. I think he plied his craft in the FCS pretty well. I think that he's going to turn this Bowling Green Falcons team around into more of a MAC contender when it's all said and done. At number 7, I have the Western Michigan Broncos. Lance Taylor, in his second year last year, led the Broncos to a bowl game. They did lose the bowl game. They finished 6-7 overall, but the team also finished 5-3 in MAC conference play, which was the program's first winning record in the conference since 2019. So a massive step forward here. They do lose Bilal Kone on the defensive side to the NFL draft, but on the offensive side, there's a lot to love. Jalen Buckley, who was one of the best MAC running backs last year, is back yet again. Then you have Blake Bosma, as well as super athletic tight end, 400 plus receiving yards last year, 4 touchdowns, someone that I think can truly take over and dominate that tight end position. Isaiah Green is one of my favorite interior defensive lineman in the entire MAC conference. I think he's going to make some real noise as a breakout player and be a real driving force for this defense. This defense actually is in a little bit of a rebuilding process here. They just have 3 returning starters, but that's Tate Hollock here, who is one of the top defensive backs in the entire MAC conference. Popeye Williams is someone that, I've been waiting to break out since last year. He was on the draft board last year. I think he only had 1.5 sacks last year. Went back to Western Michigan, so he's someone to keep a lookout for as well. Rodney McGraw and Tyson Lee form a really nice, promising trio in the trenches there for the Western Michigan Broncos. It is the secondary that I am a little bit worried about, especially without their best player in Bilal Kone. But their defense did average 6.2 yards per play given up last year, which was pretty abysmal for the most part. But I'm thinking that there's going to be a steady improvement, especially from the trenches up front. So I think there's a lot to like about this Western Michigan team. I think they're going to make some real noise, and Lance Taylor has some good football. The Central Michigan Chippewas I have at number 6 with a record prediction of 7-5. Matt Drinkall is taking his 42-17 record over the last 6 years at Army over to Central Michigan now, and he's got a solid group of players returning. Joe Labas is returning from injury. He missed the last 6 games of last year, and they are certainly reloading around him on the offensive side. Tyson Davis is coming back from injury. Tulane transfer Trey Cornist is going to be a huge part of this offense. I like, you kind of like what you saw from Cornist, but he never really got the true game time there. So I think in Central Michigan, he's going to have, the he's going to have every snap. He's going to be that bell cow running back for them on the offensive side. A lot to like. On the defensive side, what I love was they were the 31st ranked defense in the nation last year, and they have 6 starters returning. Jordan Kwiatkowski is someone that I'm a huge fan of going into the draft cycle. Michael Heldman had 6 tackles for a loss last year in limited play, who I think is going to get a starting spot this year and make some true noise. There's a lot to like about the Central Michigan Chippewas team. I think as long as Drinkall could kind of I know going from Army to the MAC, really honestly might be kind of sort of a lateral move in terms of quality of opponents. So I think Drinkall brings a lot to like. They got returning weapons on offense through the transfer portal, and then defense, they bring back 6 out of 11 starters from a top 31 defense last year. So I think the Chippewas are in for a little bit of a boost this upcoming season. At number 5, I have the Northern Illinois Huskies here with a record prediction of 8-4, same as last year. They finished 8-5. They lost their bowl game, but Thomas Hammock had a fantastic year for the Northern Illinois Huskies last year. They did lose a couple key pieces on defense. Well, I should say more than a couple. They lost their top 8 tacklers from the previous season and didn't really do that much for the most part to replace them through the transfer portal. So it's going to be difficult. But Jacob Finley is a cornerback prospect that I like quite a bit. He's back to anchor that secondary. Telly Johnson Jr. is one of a 3-headed monster from the backfield that I think is going to break out in a big way. Grayson Barnes is another player I like quite a bit. They did lose Trayvon Rudolph, who was a standout for Northern Illinois last year, so that's going to be a tough loss for them. Yeah, I have them kind of sort of in the same spot as last year because I think Thomas Hammock is a really great coach. I think the defense is going to regress a little bit, but there's a lot to like on the offensive side of the ball from this Northern Illinois Husky team. But really, the defensive side is going to be tough. Jacob Finley, like I said, is back. They do have some decent pieces on the defensive side. Roy Williams, Jelani Williams off both edges is something to like a lot. The Williams boys off the edge is something to like a lot. And I've mentioned Finley a bunch of times. But other than that, this is a lot of question marks on this defensive side. A new defensive coordinator coming in too. So there's a lot going on, a lot of moving pieces for this Northern Illinois team. I think that 8-4, I think is more than fine for what this team can bring. The reigning MAC champions, the Ohio Bobcats, I have at number 4 at 8-4 overall. Really, the biggest loss for the Bobcats this past season was Tim Albin departing. That was tough. Brian Smith, an unproven offensive coordinator, is going to take over at the head. I shouldn't say unproven in terms of being an offensive-minded coach. I mean an unproven head coach. Let me rephrase that. But they're getting back Parker Navarro, who is, Timothy Chalamet's favorite player of all time. He's coming back as well. Adonis Williams Jr. is going to be a fantastic piece to bring back to this defense as well. Breakout here, I have Chase Hendricks. He had 400 receiving yards last year. I believe the Ohio Bobcats are without their top 2 receiving options from last year. And Hendricks is a speedy, big wide receiver on the outside. So that's something to be on the lookout as well. But yeah, I just think this is a case of the Bobcats losing out on talent to the transfer, graduation, or the NFL, not really replacing it, and the other 3 teams above them getting that much better. So I think the Bobcats are in for another solid season. I think Parker Navarro is probably a top 3 quarterback in the MAC conference itself. I think that he is easily gonna be their offensive player of the year, but I think just in terms of overall standings, I think the Bobcats are gonna be a team that, kinda just suffer from everyone else around them getting better and them kinda either staying the same or just getting a little bit worse. So at 3, this might be a surprise. I have the Buffalo Bulls with a record prediction of 8-4 as well. Pete Lembo was fantastic for the Bulls last year, taking them from 3-9 to 9-4 with 6-2 overall in MAC play. There are 16 total starters back for this Buffalo Bulls team. Al-Jay Henderson, I think, is going to be fantastic. Dion Crawford is an unbelievable linebacker prospect that I think is going to find himself being drafted very high in the NFL draft. And then you have Kobe Stewart. After a brief stint in the transfer portal, he decided to come back. So the defensive side, there's 10 starters back on the defensive side. I'm not worried about the defensive side at all. Offensive side, the running game, I'm not really worried about. Nick McMillan and Victor Snow are back to form a 1-2 punch at the receiver position. I mentioned Al-Jay Henderson already, but CJ Ogbonna did transfer, but they have Taquan Roberson who transferred in. And that's the biggest question mark for me for this team. I know it should be a seamless transition, but Roberson is also a player that is in his, I believe, his sixth collegiate season and really hasn't made an impact anywhere he's been. So that's a huge question mark for this team. CJ Ogbonna was huge for them last year, and then he transferred out, and now you have this unproven quarterback here. So it's a big if for me. If it's a seamless transition, you could be looking at the Buffalo Bills being the MAC champions this upcoming season. This team is loaded with talent, probably one of the most talented overall rosters the Bulls have ever had in their history. I know that might sound crazy, especially with a team that had Khalil Mack on it, but yeah, no, I do believe that this team is very, very sound offensively, very, very sound defensively. There's just a massive question mark at the quarterback position. But if Roberson plays half as good as Ogbonna did last year, you're looking at easily the MAC champions. At number 2, I have the Miami Redhawks here, firmly cementing themselves in the MAC championship yet again. I have them as a record at 9-3. Chuck Martin has done a phenomenal job with this team since taking over. And really, the biggest transfer in the MAC offseason for me was DeQuan Finn. So DeQuan Finn left Toledo, went to Baylor, kind of got outplayed by Sawyer Robertson, and he's decided to transfer back to the MAC. Now he is the starting quarterback of the Redhawks, who have had one of the best defenses in the MAC over the last 5 years. Adam Trick, I think, is going to be a great player for them. Oscar McWood is another breakout candidate. But I think DeQuan Finn coming back is really going to be the difference for this Redhawk team. Chuck Martin, fantastic coach. DeQuan Finn is a fantastic quarterback for the MAC. I believe his team, when he played for Toledo, averaged about 35.2 points per game with him at the helm. This Miami offense could really use a bump from someone like DeQuan Finn. I think his style of play matches up perfectly for this team, and look out for the Redhawks, because getting a already proven MAC quarterback in there with DeQuan Finn. I know that Brett Gabbert was great for them the last few years, but DeQuan Finn just offers a little bit more. And then, to no one's surprise, it is the Toledo Rockets I have at number 1 with a 10-2 overall prediction. Last year was a little bit of a setback for Toledo, but Jason Candle has revamped this team. Tucker Gleason, who was up there as one of the best quarterbacks in the MAC last year, still has Junior Vandross III, who had 900 plus receiving yards last year. You take Junior Vandross, you add Trayvon Rudolph to that, and then in the backfield, the Toledo Rockets last year, I believe, had the 120th ranked rushing attack in the FBS, which is obviously horrible. But then they added Chip Trainum, who I think hasn't gotten his fair shake of it. I think he's going to be able to take over that backfield here. This was a former, I believe Trainum, I know Trainum was on Kentucky last year. I don't remember who he was on the year before. I want to say it was Ohio State. I'll be quite honest with you, but hasn't found his footing yet in college football, but he has a massive opportunity to lead this backfield for the Toledo Rockets. There's a lot to like on the defensive side of the ball. It's funny because this defense over the last 3 years has lost Quinyon Mitchell. They lost Darius Alexander. They lost Maxim Hook, They still continue to have fantastic players come through. This is a real powerhouse in the MAC. I mean, Jason Candle has built an absolute dynasty in the MAC with this team. I think that they are going to run away with the MAC this year. And then that leads us to the MAC championship, where I have the Miami of Ohio Redhawks taking on the Toledo Rockets. And then I have the Toledo Rockets winning the MAC conference for the 2025-26 season. I just think far and away from top to bottom, they have the most complete team with probably the most devastating offensive attack in the entire conference. Defensive, they're always going to hold their own. They always have phenomenal prospects coming through. This year is no different. I think the MAC is getting better in terms of overall play and overall talent. And I think Toledo is leading that charge. Toledo, Miami, Buffalo, Ohio, they're all leading the charge for the MAC to be a lot better than the punching bag of college football. So let me know what you guys think about my MAC championship predictions in the comment section below. This is the way that these videos are going to go from now on. This is the style for this new series. So let me know what you guys think about that as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. And if you want to see a specific conference in the next video, please let me know in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching today. Hope you enjoyed, and I hope I see you in the next one.